Hey, what's up? This is Jason Drone. Welcome to today's episode of GSD Daily. This is episode 108. We're going to talk about picking the right call to action for your webinar. And we're also going to talk about the tools and tech and gear and stuff that you need to pull off a webinar that you can sell high-ticket products and services on. So this entire week, we've been recapping, well, not recapping. So basically, we've been going through this, which is a PDF that we put together on, let's see, there we go, the Automated Webinar Playbook. So you can get this thing for free at, I'm actually going to change this little ticker here. So download PDF at, there we go. All right, so there we go. So you can go ahead and download this PDF for free at doneforyou.com/legendary. Now, the reason it's /legendary is this is our L1 funnel, which is basically, it's a high-ticket automated webinar funnel, and it walks through the exact process of creating something automated that basically sells for you, and it sells your coaching program, your consulting program, your high-ticket digital product, your lead magnet, or not lead magnet. Sometimes you need a lead magnet, but it sells all that stuff for you. So basically, last couple of days, we've been walking through this guide. Yesterday we talked about this. Where is it? Right there, which we went through and we went through this sales funnel process. And then we went through this piece, which was the checklist on all of the material that you need in order to pull off one of these funnels. So that was yesterday's thing. Today, what we're doing is we're talking about maximizing conversion. So we're going to walk through the next probably 10 or so pages of this guide. But basically, when it gets to maximizing conversion, your webinar does a lot of work. So I call it the triple trigger. So basically, your webinar helps you generate leads. So you're generating leads to cold traffic or warm traffic or your email list or whatever. You're basically getting people to raise their hand and say, yes, I am interested in the thing that you are offering, or I'm interested in the challenge that you're presenting and the challenge you're going to be solving on the webinar. Yes, I am interested in transforming my business or myself into that thing that you're going to be educating on. That's what registering for a webinar means. Now, that makes the webinar makes the webinar an awesome lead generation tool, if nothing else. But webinars do so much more than that. So on the webinar, you usually have webinars anymore are a little bit shorter. They don't go for 90 minutes like they did 5 or 6 years ago. Most webinars are 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, it tops out at. But your webinar really, it generates a lead. It engages in bonds with the prospect. So what you're doing is you're kind of compressing that whole interest or awareness, interest, desire, action. You're compressing it into like a 60-minute chunk of time. So you're getting awareness from the prospect. They are becoming interested in the thing that you are offering. They find themselves desiring the thing, hopefully, if they're the right customer avatar and all that stuff. And then they take action on it. So it's really this compressed block of time that you're going to get somebody engaged, interested in taking action. And the last piece is the call to action. Now, in maximizing the conversion, there's a couple of things you have to take into consideration. The first is, who is your target avatar? Are they a busy executive who is in no way going to ever schedule something on their calendar, like an hour block of time for a web-based presentation? They're going to have one of their underlings do it. If that's the case, then you need to engage with them immediately on demand. And sometimes you need to engage with them with a PDF first, showcasing your ability, and then inviting them to the webinar. In other very aspirational markets like business development, business opportunity, a lot of times you can schedule that webinar out in advance, and people are going to sign up for it. But really, the key to maximizing your conversion on the webinar is presenting the right call to action that matches up with the prospect. So here's kind of the framework of the successful webinar. In most markets, in most niches, the call to action should really drop around 45 minutes. So, and it part of that is because when somebody blocks out time for a webinar, they usually block 60 minutes. So what you want to do is you want the call to action to land about 45 minutes in, and then have some time to decompress from there, answer some questions, maybe drop a couple testimonials, whatever. You want to have a very brief intro section. So I tell a lot of our clients, like, the biography and introductory part of the webinar needs to be this big in comparison to the whole webinar. People don't care about you. They don't care about who you are usually. They care about what you can do for them. They care about the problem that you're going to solve for them. They don't necessarily care about who you are until after they learn about the solution. So it's important to introduce yourself because that's just good manners. But at the same time, don't spend a whole lot of time on talking about your accolades and your education and your experience and your history, because most likely it doesn't matter yet. It will matter afterwards. It matters after you showcase your ability, but not right now. So the bio can be real short. Then you talk about the solution, and then you can even get into your story or how it ties in with your story or whatever. But you need to deliver value. We always use questions in our webinar, and that is to engage the audience thinking, to engage the thinking of the audience, really. And here's why. Even whenever you're asked a question, your brain answers that question, regardless of if you kind of consciously come up with the answer yourself. Whenever you're posed with a question, your brain answers it, which is it engages it. Sometimes that comes up to the conscious level, where you can actually verbalize your answer. But it's if you're asked a question, your brain's going to answer it. So that's why we use questions. It engages folks. It aligns their thinking. And a lot of the times what we do 3 successful questions, and they start very broad. You can think of it as a funnel. Start very broad, and then the next question is a little bit more narrow, and the next question is even more narrow, and that last question is what sets up the rest of the presentation. Then what you do is you move to content for like 20 or 30 minutes. You talk about, your 4-step system or 5 hacks or 6 questions or 6 secrets or whatever. And then you transition that into the pitch. And that's where the call to action comes in. So the call to action itself there's an art in moving from good content to a good call to action. And we always try to make it as seamless as possible. We try not to make it real abrupt. One of my biggest pet peeves is the transition that is, now we've covered, and there's so much more to cover other than this, but all we have is, 45 minutes in this presentation. So what I did was blah, 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 blah. I put together a coaching program where it'll reveal the secrets of the universe and you can have access for blah, blah, blah money. It needs to be more elegant than that, so we try to have a nice transition between the content and how that content that they just learned can be further reinforced or further accelerated by the offer. So that tends to work pretty well. And then right here in the PDF is some notes, that you can take as you kind of go through it. Now, choosing a call to action that matters. This is really kind of what the whole high ticket webinar thing is all about. The call to action you need when you are selling a high ticket thing is a strategy session. So the call to action really is going to be signing up, booking a call on your calendar or your team's calendar, your sales rep's calendar, whatever. So the webinar really sets up the sale, but it doesn't actually sell the thing. The webinar sets up the sales call, and the sales call sells the thing. And the sales call is only effective if the offer is great for both sides. Meaning the offer, the prospect gets something solved that they really need to have solved, the solution for their problems. And then, of course, you or your company are providing the solution and you're happy about the client or you're happy about the project too. So that's one of the best ways to really maximize conversion, because what I usually tell my clients is when you have a webinar that is set up like this, where it's the a webinar that goes into a strategy session call, typically you're going to close like 1 in 4 when you're first starting, because the webinar, if it's doing its job, is really kind of, talking about the offer, talking about the problem, talking about the solution. Just the fact that somebody went through that webinar and then ultimately booked a call and then, answered some questions on an application, then we know that they're going to be a good fit or not a good fit. And if they're not a good fit, just don't even waste your time on the call, so you don't have to if you don't want to, you know what I mean? So get on the call, have a great call. Sometimes it'll be a 1 call close or 2 call closes or 3 call close or whatever. But as long as you're serving your prospect, then you're going to close some sales. Now, as far as like the tools, so the benefits beyond sales. First of all, you build your email list because your webinars are great lead generation tools. You're selling more of your product or service, and you're also connecting with your audience in a way that is different than just a kind of a cold website. So those are 3 of the biggest benefits that you get out of this webinar. Now, the tools that you're going to need. So the tools in tech have changed a little bit, but not much. There are so many things now, especially now, like mid-pandemic, that we've been shoved into needing to use. Like we've had to figure them out. So not us, we've been using them forever, but now the population is just a whole lot more comfortable with Zoom. Everybody has webcams, everybody knows how to do video through their computer for the most part. And if they don't know how to do it, video through their computer, they know how to do it through their phone. So as a global population, we've all figured out video, to a much better degree. So that makes your job infinitely more easy now. So here are some of the mics that we use. It's totally up to you if you want to use this stuff. I used to always say that like Apple's tools, Apple laptops and stuff, the camera and stuff were great. They're not so much anymore. I guess this new line of MacBook Pros and stuff that are coming out, they're going to have like full like 4K cameras or at least 1080 cameras. But the 2 pieces of equipment you're really going to need is a microphone. There's some examples here. The Blue Snowball, the Blue Yeti. Those are 2 that you can find at Best Buy. You can also order them online. I use these, this is an Audio Technica AT2020. They have a USB variant and then also like a music recording variant. So you can, I don't know if I can share this. The cord's kind of short, but that cord right there you go. So this cord right here. So this is an AT2020. This is a floor stand. And then this is I don't know anything about recording music, but I do know that this is I think it's an XLR cord. And then it pipes into like a mixer. So that's what I use. I have an AT2020 on my desk over there too, a USB variation. So that way we have uniform recording, on videos and stuff. The Logitech HD Pro, this camera has been nice. I actually have been using something different though. So this is an actual 1080 camera that pipes into a USB connection on the computer, which is sometimes why I have issues with the video, because it's not really, it works, but like this setup was kind of created for gaming. And then I have the same thing over on that computer there. So there's some lights. Now, these lights, super nice, but now they have LED variations. So there's a light there, which is the same as this light here. So I have one that kind of sits, you can see it in my glasses. Now you're not going to be able to unsee it. So we have one of these lights, and then I have like a ring light over on that computer, which helps out quite a bit too. And let's see, that's it for tools. Oh, and then software. So here, let me show you these though. So let me pull up a web browser because I want to show you kind of what I have been using from a camera setup. So this is a camera setup that I have been using. So you can see that I actually last purchased this thing on April 28th. So I have 2 of these cameras. Well, so what happened was like I would have just bought 2 webcams, but with the pandemic, literally everybody started buying webcams. So I was looking around, and like a good solid brand name webcam was like $189. And I was like, well, shit, why don't I just buy a camcorder and then I can use it for other stuff if I want to. So I ended up grabbing 2 of these camcorders, one for this, and this is what I'm looking at now, and then another one over there, which is what, when I'm like at my sitting desk, it's what I use. And then I got a HDMI to USB adapter. So it's basically one of these things. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of different variations of this. A lot of them are from China. It really just depends on kind of what you want to go with. I ended up going with, let's see the brand of the one that I have. A Hornetech video capture. Hornetech, Hornet. That is. So it's right there. This is the one that I grabbed. So I have 2 of these, and basically what it is it's a HDMI cable inside the one, in one side, and USB out of the other side. So it's a passive device. A lot of gamers use it. What they do is they use like an HDMI splitter, and then one side goes to their TV and the other side goes to their computer so that they can stream shit on like Twitch or whatever. I think that's how it works. I'm not 100% positive. But just in reading the reviews, I saw that a lot of people were doing just that. There's all kinds of other, I think there's one called an Elgato, which is one that I read about quite a bit. But there's lots of different kind of video capture tools. So this is just what I've been using. If you have a camcorder that outputs HDMI, then you can use one of these things and get a really great camera resolution on it. And then we talked about mics. So those are probably the two most pivotal things. I also have one of these, Sling Studio. I think it's at myslingstudio.com. Yeah, so I have a Sling Studio 2 that I record, and you can. It's like a video camera switching unit, so you can record anything on an iOS. Like you can have a iPhone, iPad, all is like recording inputs as well as these. So which is pretty cool for camera switching. I don't do it like on the live streams, but I do it on some of the other videos. So just a couple things from a webcam standpoint. Now, when we get to webinar software, there are so many different types of webinar software out there now that will help you do these webinars. A couple that I mean, from a tried and true standpoint, like, really, GoToWebinar is nice. I have been a GoToWebinar user forever, but I do have to say that I switched to Zoom for so much of our things just because it's easier. GoToWebinar, you don't need to download software, or Zoom, you don't need to download the software. You send a link and everybody just has it now. GoToWebinar, I found that so many people were using Zoom that now GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting, like having to download stuff for like the conferencing was just a pain in the ass. So we stopped using it. We moved over to Zoom. In terms of like automated webinar stuff, there's EverWebinar is still the best. EverWebinar, great tool from a marketing standpoint. Let's see. And those are really kind of pretty much the only tools that we use from a webinar standpoint. Anymore though, like literally, we talked on Monday, we talked about the on-demand webinars, which is pretty much all we do anymore. So it's basically a landing page that kicks over into a webinar room page. The webinar room page is set to have a video that automatically starts. So it'll, the webinar room page, the video just automatically goes live. And then there's a webinar replay page that has a call to action button underneath it. So we don't even use like special software for it anymore. We just use like a Vimeo web player that shows up. Let's see. And I think for the most part, that's about as far as we were going to get in this guide today. Email marketing software. For the most part, we use like ActiveCampaign, or we use RCRM, which is Axis, or we use like Infusionsoft or Keep or in Entreport. Those are pretty much the email. So if somebody opts in for the webinar, they get the email through those email marketing platforms, and we tie all that stuff in, and then the webinar gets delivered from there. Actually, we got some stuff on webinar tools. All right, so I think probably the last thing we really need to talk about, and we kind of touched on it yesterday, which is just, all the different emails that you need in order to pull this thing off. So you need the webinar promo emails, the emails that go out promoting the webinar. You need the webinar replay emails. So that is the emails that go out after somebody attends the webinar. And those emails promote the webinar, they promote the offer. If this is an evergreen webinar, you can do evergreen webinar promo and evergreen replay emails. And that's really, it's really about it from an asset standpoint. You need the sales presentation too, so you actually have to do the webinar slides in order to have the webinar, and then we have a little checklist here. So your microphone, your camera, your lighting, the webinar software. So what are you going to use for that? What are you going to use for the email marketing? And then what sequences are you going to run? So, and then if you have any notes, go ahead and write them there. And if you have questions on putting the whole thing together, go to doneforyou.com/start, fill out the little application, and jump on a call with us. And then we'll go through an action plan with you, talk about your funnel, your traffic, the webinar setup and all that stuff. And I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to get into the replay, which is the replay and the replay email sequence. Probably 85% of your sales are going to come from the replay. So it's actually a bigger part to the high ticket sales system than the webinar itself is the replay. So we'll cover that tomorrow, and I will talk to you soon. All right. Thanks.